Welcome, everyone. My name is Zachary Greco, Chair of the Commission. If you are here to present a project, you will have limited time to make your presentation, so we suggest being thorough but concise. When coming to the microphone, you will need to identify yourself and your relationship to the project. The commissioners will not ask any questions during your presentation. Your project should be presented in the following order: site plan, elevations, architectural details, and wall sections. Staff will then present the staff report. We will then ask for any public comment. Following your presentation, the commissioners will be again asking questions in the same order that the presentation. Please state and spell your name clearly if you are here to speak for or against a project. Your time will be limited to 3 minutes, so take some time now to summarize your comments because 3 minutes go by very quickly. Following public comment, the applicant will have 5 minutes for rebuttal. The public hearing will then be closed. The only comments which will be allowed after the public hearing is closed will be in response to any questions from the commissioners. The commissioners will then discuss the case and will make their decision based upon the city ordinance, chapter 27 of the city zoning code, the design guidelines, the Secretary of the Interior standards, the Historic Preservation Development Review comments, HPDRC, and the testimony given at this public hearing. The ARC can only act on items that are within our specific jurisdictional responsibility. Owner and agents are independently responsible to obtain any appropriate permits and/or approvals. If you haven't already done so, please silence all cell phones. At this point, I'll ask my fellow commissioners, starting on my left, to introduce themselves.
Susan Klaus-Smith, architect and vice chair.
Shauna Boyd, interior designer.
Ashley DeCubis, I'm an attorney.
Stephen Sutton, architect. I also hold the architectural historian chair.
We're also joined here tonight by city staff: Dennis Fernandez, Ron Vila, Elaine Lund, Beverly Jusek, and Kamaria Pettis-Mackel. At this point, would a fellow commissioner like to make a motion for the meeting minutes of January 4th and January 6th, 2021 to be put into record?
I move that the meeting minutes from January 4th and January 6th, 2021 meetings be introduced to the record.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager. Welcome to this evening's public hearing for the February cycle of cases. I do have the list of administrative reviews to submit into the record. I'll provide that to the clerk. And then also, we will be meeting for the second part of the application review this Wednesday, February 3rd. I have checked with TPD, and there are just minimal street closures related to the Super Bowl events. It doesn't appear that it'll be something that will impact our ability to meet. So we can plan on seeing you on Wednesday as well. With that, I think we're ready to move on through the agenda. For the conflicts of interest and ex parte communication, our legal counsel will handle that section.
Good evening, Commissioners. Kamaria Pettis-Mackel from the City Attorney's Office. Will the Commissioners please state whether or not they have any conflicts of interest regarding any of the items that are listed on the agenda?
None.
None.
Thank you. Additionally, will the Commissioners state on the record whether or not they've had any ex parte communications regarding anything that's listed on the agenda?
No.
I've had
No.
none.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Moving down the agenda under continuations, there are none reflected on tonight's agenda. And at this time, we'll do the swear-in. Ms. Cusack will swear everybody in that wishes to testify this evening. Please stand up and raise your right hand. So at this point, we'll move to the first case, which is ARC 21-60. This is for the address of 800 South Newport Avenue. This is in the Hyde Park Historic District. The primary structure is a contributing structure that dates back to 1914. The zoning classification is RS60. The use on that primary structure is residential. They have two requests this evening. The first one is a north side yard setback variance from 7 foot to 2 foot. And then along with that variance for the introduction of a pool is for the pool itself, and that would require a certificate of appropriateness if the variance is successful. At this time, I'd like to share my screen, which is up on the monitors at this point. This is the Sanborn map from 1929. Property in question is highlighted in the green box. You see it as a corner parcel, faces Newport, and the secondary cross street is Inman. You have Swan to the north to get kind of your bearings. If you look at the Sanborn map, you see the primary structure here, and you see the footprint of the primary structure, and then you see a smaller detached accessory structure on the rear that has a 16-foot alley. As we go to the overhead, you see the primary structure that faces Newport and Inman. You see that a portion of the footprint of the original structure has been enclosed, and then you see the footprint of the existing accessory structure as it is today. It grew a little bit to the north, so it almost challenges all the property lines. This is the primary elevation, which is the front elevation off of Newport. This is moving to the south elevation. You see the proximity of the facade to the setback, and then the abutting structure to the south. This is the north elevation on the corner of Inman and Newport. You see part of the wraparound porch was enclosed to create this sunroom effect. The pool request is in this area here. This was the addition that enclosed some of the footprint from the 1929 Sanborn map. And then you see the accessory structure kind of peeking out over here. So the separation between the two structures is indicated by this photo. This is looking back at the site. Once again, we're on Inman. This is the north elevation. This is the area that for the request for the pool. And you see the footprint of the accessory structure and then the primary structure. And this is the 16-foot alley. This is looking down that alley. The next shot is going to be in between the two structures. Oh, excuse me. This is the rear elevation as it engages to the alley. And that concludes the photo presentation. This time, we're going to have the owner address the board.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Allison Wilkins, and I'm the owner of 800 South Newport Avenue. I am here this evening because recently my husband was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and his physician has requested that he have ocular therapy. Would I love to have a pool? Yes. This isn't really a pool, it's more of a spa. It's a very thin strip designed to provide some therapy for him and his condition. You have seen all of the pictures, and we have survey, etc. I would like to take this opportunity to turn this portion over to my architect, Mr. Alfonso.
Albert Alfonso, 1705 North 16th Street. Good to see you, commissioners. So this is, actually we can turn this over. Get a little feedback here. Is it me? Okay.
Point the mic in.
I'm okay with this if you guys are. We'll just plow ahead. So I met Miss Wilkins recently, and you know, she seemed like someone who could use an architect, and I talked to Ron about it. Certainly, we're looking for the variance. There's a medical condition here, but as you can see here, this is really the only part that you could actually put a spa, and as you all know, as architects, you would never put a swimming pool on the north side of a house. It's in the shade all the time. So I think that what would happen is if you approve the variance, then, you know, we certainly don't have any architectural drawings tonight to show you guys. and certainly that would be developed following the variance. So I think that, Ron sort of described it pretty clearly. We're looking for a 7-foot to 2-foot reduction on the setback. And so with that, it's a pretty simple request for the variance. The hardship, obviously, is there's no other place on the site to put this spa, medical spa. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. As part of the request for the variance, there's 6 hardship criteria. If you could go through each of the criteria a little bit more thoroughly and put that on the record, please. To illustrate, your hardship, you might want to go back and forth to the survey and show the different locations that you believe that the pool can't go, and then this is the only place that it can go.
So number 1, there are no possible property areas except the one requested here. And if you want, do you want me to read the criteria as well? Okay. Number 1, the alleged hardship or practical difficulties are unique and singular with respect to the property or with respect to a structure or building thereon, and are not those suffered in common with other properties, structures, or buildings similar located. So, as Ron had mentioned, really, this is structure, this is a front porch, front yard setback, so obviously this is the only place to put it. Number 2, the hardship or practical difficulty does not result from the actions of the applicant. Self-created hardship or practical difficulty shall not justify variance. The request is on behalf of a medical diagnosis. This is a recent diagnosis for Dr. Wilkins, and his physician had recommended water therapy. Number 3, the variance, if granted, will not substantially interfere with injury, health, safety, or welfare of others whose property would be affected by allowance of the variance. The spa will not interfere with any neighbor's health, safety, or even visibility. The interesting thing is it's being behind the wall. I don't think you can't actually see the thing at all from any point from on the sidewalk or anything. Number 4, the variance is in harmony with and serves the general intent and purpose of this chapter in the adopted Tampa Comprehensive Plan. Obviously it will, and certainly if we move forward, we'll be presenting to you some architectural interior drawings of the pool and the spa for your review. Number 5, allowing the variance will result in substantial justice being done, considering both the public benefits intended to be secured by this chapter and the individual hardship or practical difficulties that will be suffered due to a failure of the board to grant a variance. This variance will obviously benefit the applicant in a health manner. Denial will result in directly impacting the physical well-being of the applicant. And then number 6, the variance, if granted, will allow development that is consistent with the design standards and compatible with the historic pattern of development within the historic district, historic conservation overlay district, multiple property designations, or the locally designated landmark or landmark site in which the subject property is located. Obviously, the structure will be consistent with the design standards that is a part of this board's review process. So I can obviously make that statement as the architect. With that, I would turn it over to Ron and the board.
Thank you. At this point, staff will present the staff report.
The finding of fact for the variance hardship has been submitted into the record. I would advise the board to move forward at this time with the variance. If the variance is successful, then we could look at the placement of the pool equipment and some other features that are usually reviewed with an application for a pool. At this time, if the owner wants to put additional information or somebody from the public could step up.
Thank you. At this point, we'll open the public hearing to any public comment for the variance. Seeing and hearing. So could you make sure you just state and spell your name?
Sure.
And then this will only be for the variance portion right
Okay.
now.
Good evening, my name is Jessica Rutley, it's R-U-T-T-L-E-Y, and I am Allie's neighbor across from Inman. So our house actually looks right at that wall, and we have no issues with her putting that spot in. And when we look over there, we won't see, and it will not affect any of our views. So we are in favor of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no one else, all right. At this point, the commissioners will now ask questions for the variance only. Would the commissioner like to begin?
I have no question at this time, sir.
No questions either.
I have no questions. I have no questions either.
I have no questions as well. Does the applicant have, or at this point, you'll have 5 minutes for a rebuttal?
I hope a rebuttal is not necessary.
Okay. We will close this portion of the public hearing and the commissioners now can discuss the case. Would anyone like to begin?
I really don't see how this could be placed anywhere else on the site. You know, obviously, we would need more details about the pool and ensuring that it meets all the codes that are required for pool safety and those sorts of things. But in terms of its general placement, I, don't disagree with the fact that you really don't have any other place to put it on the property. So,
Anyone else?
Not I, sir.
Okay. I would tend to agree. There's not really anywhere else on the site to place a pool. And it seems about the only logical place. So would a commissioner like to make a motion for the variance?
I move that the variance for case ARC 21-60 for the property located at 800 South Newport Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at this public hearing for a north side yard setback from 7 feet to 2 feet, based upon the petitioner meeting the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-114D for the City of Tampa Code of Ordinances for granting variance as stated and the evidence provided in this public hearing, specifically that there are no other locations for a spa on this site.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now moving to the certificate of appropriateness, does the agent or the owner wish to put additional information into the record?
The only thing I would say is I believe that, obviously we'll be coming back for the details of the drawing, but this is basically just a geometry plan that was raised. You can see this is where the wall happens. I think the pool is, and also just this is kind of a visual graphic of that the owner has given me about what she thinks it could look like. With these businesses, obviously the pool equipment, as Ron had mentioned earlier, that's the stuff that you really need to pay attention to. So I think what we would like to ask for today is just a preliminary approval, and then come back to you with specific architectural elevations and floor plans and specifications at the next hearing.
Ron Vila, staff for Historic Preservation. When staff gets a request for a pool, there's some items that we look at. We look at the proximity from the water's edge to the property line to see if it meets City of Tampa code, which this one did not, and that's why the variance was sought and granted tonight. Some of the other issues we look at is the perimeter fencing to meet City of Tampa code, and this is encapsulated with a fence as it exists today and does meet code. Then we look for the pool equipment placement to make sure it does not obstruct any vehicular access and is placed in the proper location. That also meets code, that's 3 foot from the property line. And then if there's any trees that would be impacted by the digging, that could negatively affect the trees in the surrounding area. And there's no budding trees in this area that would be affected. So it's staff's recommendation that this could be reviewed and approved, or at least delegated back to staff.
Thank you. Right, at this point, we'll open the public hearing to any public comment for the certificate of appropriate portion. Okay, seeing and hearing none, the commissioners can now ask questions for the project for the CA portion. Would a commissioner like to begin?
I don't have any questions.
Any questions?
No?
I don't have any questions.
Well, at this point, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
I mean, I think also, before she gets up, I would say that certainly there isn't anything here aesthetically that is going to be impactful to the neighborhood. We have worked with staff many times in getting things done after this, so, I mean, it would be really great if we could get approval tonight for that, and then work with, you know, Ron and Dennis to work through the details of pool equipment and things like that. So I think that would be the optimum outcome, as certainly time is of the essence here for the applicant. You have anything closing?
Yes, I actually did submit a plan, and it showed where the pool equipment was gonna be. I don't know if you have it there. I think just give me a minute, and
But I really think that we could probably work through that
okay.
with
Okay.
staff.
That sounds good. I'm
Yeah.
gonna trust the experts here.
Yeah.
I wanna thank everybody for your time. Again, it's really not a pool. It's big enough to get somebody some therapy, and I appreciate, you know, you taking the time to review this. I hope that we will get approval, and we will meet with all the standards that are necessary in that tiny little space.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you again. Thank you.
Hold on.
At this point, we will close the portion of the public hearing, and commissioners can now discuss the case. Anyone like to begin?
I will grant the fact that this is a landscape site improvement, a pool, a spa, as opposed to something that's more related to a built and habitable structure. However, as admitted by the applicant's agent, there is limited information right now as to exactly what is going to be happening with this landscape structure and its attendant other parts as being a preliminary proposal at this point in time. I'm wondering if it would be actually appropriate to have a continuation with respect to this landscape intervention when there is a more complete package of information and details as to what's happening with this pool, its equipment, its grounds, pavements, and other such things that we can make a firm decision on, as opposed to having staff hanging out there and having to contend with all of these line items.
Kamaria Pettisnaka from the City Attorney's Office. Just want to remind the commissioners that if, not knowing what the commissioners plan to do with the motion, but if the commissioners are inclined to do a preliminary approval for this application, you could be specific about what you would like the applicant and the architect to provide in order to bring this application back before the commission. So if you are inclined to do that, I just ask for you to be specific on the record so that the architect and the applicant know what the commission, the additional information that the commission needs. But if you're more inclined to do an approval or denial, then certainly that's within your purview to do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now that the variance has been granted, these are pretty routine, being approved at the staff level. I mean, I don't necessarily feel like we need to bring them back in front of us again. I think that this is a normal course of business for the staff.
Generally, I would agree with that. My only caution is that sometimes these projects, they get going, and even though the general intent is to provide that horizontal feature, if there are discussions that start to move some sort of pergola or something to dress it up, those things start to become elements under our purview. So I agree that staff can generally handle these types of applications, but maybe we do consider some conditions that, and of course, staff knows generally that that's what needs to happen, but I think we need possibly to state that for the record.
I agree. So I think if we make a motion, we can condition that the scope of the project managed by staff includes only a spa, no sort of pergola. My only concern is that there was like a vertical element shown in the inspiration image, and I don't know if that has any tie into the primary structure, or whether that's totally unrelated, whether that ties into the wall and the exterior instead. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
That's a good point. I noticed that little wall as well,
Yeah.
but that's the danger with having a very preliminary set. We can either send it back to staff, or we can give them preliminary approval and have them come back.
For me, I think as long as we kind of dictate the recommendation and the conditions that it are specific only towards the pool, so the spa, the materials, and the where the equipment goes, I think it's okay. If it's anything kind of balloons beyond that, I would think typically that presentation or that application would have to probably come back to us anyways, because it now doesn't meet what they presented. So for me, I feel comfortable moving forward with staff looking at this, as long as we maybe just add a caveat in it.
Right, just saying maybe that it's limited solely to the pool and its materials. Anything beyond that would have to come back in front of us. So any other, fence, any other structure, basically. So it's limited to the pool or spa.
Agree.
Would a commissioner like to make a motion, or is there anything else they'd like to discuss?
I'd like to move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC. Of course, I flipped this over. Sorry. In ARC 21-60, for the property located 800 South Newport Avenue, with the following conditions: that the final selection and location of the pool/spa and the location of the equipment be reviewed with staff. Any other features that might be considered in and around that location, including any renovations to the existing site wall, be reconsidered and brought to the commission for consideration. Because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines of the City of Tampa for the following reasons: that it does meet the site setback locations generally, and that it does I don't have my little cheat sheet today. Sorry. And well, we can't even say the details, but I'll just say generally that it does meet the Hyde Park design guidelines based on its location on the site.
I'll second the motion.
And then, just for the record, can the applicant or the owner just go on, or the agent or the owner go on record and say that you understand the conditions and if you agree to them?
Yes, I understand and agree to them.
Yes, I understand and agree.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you, everyone.
Can you hit PC? Commissioners, good evening. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. Our next case is ARC 21-99. This is for the address of 801 South Newport. This is also in the Hyde Park Historic District. primary structure was constructed in 1912 as contributing. It does have the RS60 zoning classification attached to this parcel. And the request this evening is for new construction in addition to the primary structure. On page 3 of your staff report, there's some past action. On the past action, it's illustrated that in May 3rd, 2018, that a new accessory structure was created at that location. There's a one-story structure there, and the request this evening is to add on to this, to the one-story structure of about 280 square feet to be at a total of 900 square foot that would be consistent with the zoning classification. There are no variances attached to this request. If we could go to my screen and share that. Thank you. So the case we just looked at was right here. We're jumping across the street to the west. This is 801 South Newport here. This is the primary structure. The Sanborn maps tell us a lot, and we use these on a daily basis. If you look here, there is no front porch associated with this house. It never had one. So, and you see how all the structures are kind of in line. So there are some styles of architecture that does not engage with the front porch. This location in 1929 had 2 accessory structures. These have been removed some time ago, and the one that you're going to see today that is indicated on the aerial that is here. So you have the primary structure and then the detached accessory structure. This is the front elevation of the primary house. As I was alluding, there's no front porch to this contributing structure. This is the side elevation that shares a lot of unique details for this style home, with the mitered corners, the banding, the bump outs here with the bays and the brackets underneath. This is moving to the north elevation, which is Inman. There was an addition here years ago that had the second part of the house added onto, and at that time the accessory structure came forward. This is looking at the rear elevation and the north elevation and part of the accessory structure. This is looking at the accessory structure here that picks up on some of the details of the primary structure. This is looking at the internal part of the accessory structure as it faces the rear yard. And the vehicular access is off the alley, so that's why the 2 garage doors off the alley. That's set back to meet transportation standards. And the last photo I'm going to share with you is the perimeter wall, the primary structure, the pool area here, and then the accessory structure. And you see the alley and how the vehicle's coming off the alley to be parked in the garage. Since the next applicant has not been sworn in at this time, if she could stand up and raise her right hand, Ms. Juzak will swear you in. We're ready for you. Thank you.
It'll catch you speaking.
Oh, fancy. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Missy Shoecraft, and I represent the owners, Jim and Kelly Ruggles. Ruggles Miller, sorry, it's a combined last name. As Ron described, this accessory structure was built in 2018, and the applicants would like to add approximately 280 square feet to the second story to bring it to a total of 900, with a deck overlooking the pool. I will just go through my presentation, if you don't mind. So this is the existing structure, the existing pool. What we're adding on the site would be the stair that would go to the new second story addition, and we're going to ask to relocate the pool equipment that currently sits here over here. So it's well within the setbacks required for the relocation of pool equipment and the air conditioning unit that would now
air-conditioned, the new 286 square foot second-story studio. This is a little more detail of what we're proposing to do. So there's an existing brick patio. We're going to continue the same brick pattern to connect to the stairwell, which is a wood stairwell, painted wood stairwell that goes up to the second story. And there's the location for the AC and the pool equipment. This is the proposed second story, which would sit over the first story, obviously, this being the neighbor's very large accessory structure just immediately here. So it's really a small studio with a 3-fixture bathroom and a tiny bar, and then an open second story deck that would oversee the pool. These are the existing west and south elevations. The west elevation is facing the alley, and we would propose to do the small studio with the stair, keeping the first floor the same, except adding a Chippendale wood railing with wood posts to bracket in the deck. On the south elevation, which is the elevation that faces the neighbor's property, this being a corner lot, there's the painted wood stair with the Chippendale rail. The overall height is just over 22 feet, which is within the zoning guidelines. This is the existing north and east elevations, which is the view that faces the pool. And we have a pair of French doors opening out of the studio onto the deck that oversees the pool. And then this is the elevation that faces the house currently. And we would do 3 windows, 3 double hung wood windows with the wood stair going up, as well as the Chippendale railing. This is the typical section which notes that we're going to use the dimensional fiberglass shingles that would match what's on the house right now. The current rafter tails would be 18 inches across with a pre-finished metal gutter. This little detail here is what is on the current home, just in a much shorter span. We have a beadboard soffit between the decorative rafter tails. There's matched painted wood trim, and I have photographs of what's there now, and then painted wood lap siding on the exterior. So this is a photograph of what's there now on the accessory structure. Like I said, it was built 2 years ago. We have the lap siding. We have the traditional wood craftsman trim around a double hung wood window. This is an example of the rafter tail, and then you see a little bit of the metal gutter. This is the kind of lighting that we would use. We would recreate that. And I believe that's all I have for the presentation.
Thank you. At this point, staff will present the staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. Ron Vila, staff with Historic Preservation. On page 4 of your staff report, there were conditions attached to this request. All the conditions were addressed. She did mention that she is going up to 22 plus feet from grade as part of the process. Any structure that has a request greater than 15 foot from grade has to come forward with a design exception. I'd like for her to put on the record what the status of that design exception is, if she's engaged in that process yet. I'll be here to answer any questions.
Thank you. At this point, we'll open the public hearing to any public comment. Seeing and hearing none, we'll move on to the commissioners asking questions. And then before any questions from my fellow commissioners, could you just, as Ron mentioned, update us on the status of the design exception?
Yes, I believe it's been approved, the DE1.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I believe it has. I'm not sure. I know it's in process.
Okay, I can, Kamaria Pettisnaka from the City Attorney's Office. I could look that up if,
You have engaged in the process, and it's
Yes,
going
yes, I
going
have.
through. So
Yes.
you
I
know,
thought
have
it
to
was
take.
approved, we paid the fee, but I'm not 100% on that, and I'm sorry, I should have checked on it before I came to the hearing tonight. But in any case,
So-
we're in process.
If that's still pending, that could be a condition that has to be approved prior to this moving forward through permitting.
Yes.
Thank you. Are there any questions from my fellow commissioners?
I do, please, if we could return to your site plan, I would like to run down, if you will, what detail you have in place respecting the screening of your relocated mechanical equipment.
So at the moment, there is a fence that goes all the way down to the corner. That's the neighbor's fence. It engages right here. You can see it on the plan. We don't at this point have any plans to screen the equipment, but we certainly can. I mean, that would not be a problem to screen it with a wood fence, if that would be the board's preference.
Thank you very much.
Any additional questions, Commissioner Sutton?
No, I do not. Thank you very much, sir.
Commissioner DeKuvis?
If you could provide the brick paver selection and some information on the gutters.
The gutters are what is existing now on the current structure. And they are, I wish I had a better picture of that, Commissioner, I'm so sorry, but it's basically, it's what the board approved just a few years ago. It's basically a half metal gutter that's on the structure now. We're simply gonna reuse those on the upper level.
Okay.
The house itself does not have any gutters.
Okay.
And I'm sorry, excuse me, ma'am, they're painted white, the same color as the rafter tails and the beadboard.
Okay, thank you. And the paver selection, is it just gonna match what's existing?
Yes,
Okay.
the brick pavers that connect to the new stair, yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
I have no
Commissioner Boyd?
questions.
I actually wanted to ask if you had any other detailed drawings about the Chippendale rail and actually how it all comes together.
No,
No?
I'm looking for the microphone. No, ma'am, at this point, I don't have a detail of the Chippendale rail. It would be a traditional wood Chippendale painted rail, which I would present to the staff to have them review and approve it. We've done them before in other projects, and I had assumed that would have been okay, but I apologize for not having that with you
Okay,
tonight.
thank you. I'm sorry.
My question, I guess I have is, well, two. One, do you have the dimensions of the overhangs for the new roof?
Yes, they're on this section. It's 18 inches.
And then, do you know what the existing overhangs are for the first floor?
Currently, all the overhangs on the first floor are gonna disappear.
Okay.
So there will be no overhangs on the first floor. On the main house, the overhangs are 3 feet.
Okay. And then, just kind of a big picture design question. Where was the inspiration taken for kind of the overall design look of the accessory structure? The idea that you have sort of the base, a little bit larger volume on one side, then you have the patio on the other. What was the thought process, I guess, behind that?
I think that was more of a programming decision, Commissioner. What they were interested in having a sort of a deck that overlooked the pool, because immediately to the south is a really large accessory structure that kind of dominates the space. So they didn't want to be kind of stuck between a 2-story addition, a deck, and then having this large accessory structure. So they wanted to open it up, basically take all the massing and put it towards the inside of the lot, and then have an open deck that oversaw the pool.
Did you or the client look at any additional sort of massing or designs for this accessory structure?
We went through a couple of iterations, but we were obviously limited by the total square footage that was allowed, and we felt that it was better to put the bulk of the massing away from the street, Inman being the primary now, because we're on a corner lot, and keep the massing away from the street side and put it on the inside of the lot.
Okay. And then, could you just quickly put up the elevation that kind of shows, I'm not sure which side it is, it's, you'll kind of see the two-story portion on the right and then the one-story portion on the left.
Would it be this one?
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Are there any additional questions from fellow commissioners or either the staff or the applicant?
Actually, now that you put this one up, there was, in my mind, there was a question about the engagement of the post at the actual enclosed component. And I just was wondering where that detail was coming from. Traditionally, you wouldn't see that engage as a post.
You mean having the post inside of the volume?
Yeah, it's kind of an odd detailing move. If there was something historical that you could
No,
reflect.
I don't think so. I think
Okay.
that was a little bit of design zhuzh.
Yeah, it was zhuzh.
It could very easily be moved out of the body.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
and then we would recenter it so that the panels will be equidistant.
Yeah, it just seems to me it's starting to add to some movement in that planar elevation that you probably really don't want.
Understood.
That's all I have.
What is the roofing material, the decking material for that open deck portion?
So we would like to use Trex or Trex-like product on the decking because, as you know, wood rot is a perennial problem. So that's what our proposed use would be, to do that.
Okay.
Like the stairs, on the other hand, would be wood and they would be painted because that's much more visible. Obviously, the decking wouldn't be visible by anybody except the users.
Okay. Are there any additional questions or comments from my fellow commissioners? Okay. At this point, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
No, other than to say I could easily see moving that post as proposed by Commissioner Klausmith. That would not be an issue at all.
Thank you. All right, at this point, we will close the public hearing. The commissioners will now discuss the case. Commissioner would like to begin.
I wanted to talk about some of the questioning that you had about the mass, where it should reside. I actually like the fact that it steps away from Inman and allows for some openness at that elevation so that as you walk along Inman, you don't feel a two-story height that continues along the entire property line, even though there is that pool there. But once you see, 6-foot fence and then you see the addition on the garage and then the main structure, it's kind of nice to have a continuous step back away from Inman.
I don't disagree. I mean, I think the rationale behind it is to pull that away from you is good. I'm struggling with, instead of an accessory structure that looks cohesive, it looks like it was an addition within another addition. And it starts to look like the three kind of been pieced together.
Unfortunately, they are constricted by the square footage, so.
So that's what I'm struggling with. Proportions kind of seem a little bit off. The massing looks just off. I have some questions about some of we did see a wall section through the 2-story portion. It would be, I think, interesting and nice to have that wall section through the 1-story as well to see how that decking kind of, either sits on or kind of how does that engage with the actual roof underneath.
I agree.
I think there's some questions about how some of the small details, like where that column, where that railing comes into place, how does that actually tie into the decking is also going to be important. But are there any other concerns or kind of comments?
Is part of the concern with the second-story addition the asymmetry of the structure after this renovation?
For me, yes.
I almost feel like if there were some sort of like roofing structure or awning or something that sort of balanced the two sides, it wouldn't feel so.
I mean, I understand why there's that stepping pattern, that obviously, you pull kind of the mass from the front towards the back, and I understand that. I think that's a good approach. Just visually to me, I'm trying to determine what kind of influence or, style or kind of architectural piece that's coming from or pulling inspiration from, and that's what I'm struggling with. So I'm not sure if anyone else has the same.
Oh, I understand where the comment comes from, because the main house has a very, very strong symmetry, if not at least some sort of sense of balance to it. And the existing accessory structure, in some respects, shares the same thing. Now we're looking at this addition to the accessory structure, and it's just totally off the map with respect to that attribute to the existing buildings on the structure, on the site. And it's kind of hard to rectify that.
Can we have that elevation put back up for us, please? Thank you. Sorry, I don't have a photograph of them.
Am I allowed to comment?
The
Point or-
Kamaria Pettisnacker from the city, okay.
Thank you.
No comments from me?
No, ma'am.
Because there is a zoning issue.
Actually, can you put the one that had the garage doors, please? The other elevation.
This one?
Yes, thank you.
I also have a question of knowing that the pool equipment currently and kind of the AC isn't covered. If we do look at some sort of screening or fence for that, if it's a fence, how does that play into it? As the applicant mentioned, where does that die into that kind of that corner? It's just the symmetry on it is just throwing me off a bit, but I can understand why and appreciate why there's that step and that separation behind it.
It's just that programmatically, I can completely understand why they want to offer
Okay.
that deck to
Yeah,
the other
makes
side.
sense.
There's also a certain aspect of a, if you will, a garden folly to this accessory structure that I find compelling in many respects. It doesn't take itself very seriously, although the detailing is very nice and crisp. I really don't have an objection to its massing or its geometry.
Okay.
Due to its scale. If this were something engaged to the existing dwelling, that might be a different matter to discuss, but this is a much smaller incursion to the overall assemblage on this site.
Okay. Are there any other additional comments, or would a commissioner like to make a motion?
I just wanted to follow up on your comment about the AC pool equipment, and I know that you had asked that question about the screening. I do feel that some consideration should be made for that.
Oh, I do agree. And there's a number of different options.
Yep.
If it was pulled out, it needs screening there, or if it even put it underneath the stair, it would still need screening there. So that's a whole coordination issue.
Agreed.
There's also the design exception that has to be approved by the city of Tampa. I would suspect that we should ask also that that ornamental railing, the Chippendale railing, and its various details, top railing engagements, be reviewed by staff.
Agreed.
I would agree.
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented in this public hearing in ARC 21-99 for the property located at 801 South Newport Avenue, with the following conditions: that the design exception is approved, that the pool equipment and AC units are screened, that the final details of the railings are approved by staff, and that the post on the second floor is relocated out of the structure and railings are recentered. because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Hyde Park design guidelines for the city of Tampa for the following reasons. That the orientation, alignment, and materials are appropriate to the district.
I second the motion.
And then, just for the record, could the agent go on and state that you understand the conditions?
Yes, I do, thank you.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Edith, I'm sorry, Kamaria Pettisnaka from the City Attorney's Office. Just for clarification for Madam Clerk, was there a nay on that vote?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
4-1.
We just need a moment while we change over staff.
It's on when the red light comes on.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. This is Elaine Lund with Architecture Review and Historic Preservation staff. The final case for your review tonight is case ARC 21-75 at 2304 North Grove Avenue in the Tampa Heights Historic District.
Excuse me, Ms. Lund, before you get started, can I get you sworn in?
Okay. And in that case, would everyone who's here for this case this evening please rise?
You solemnly swear affirm that the testimony you'll be providing this evening is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do. Thank you. So this is an application for new construction for one single-family residence. Are several variance requests associated with this project. There are 5 of them. This is a rather small lot. It's, as you will see when we go through the presentation, it's a lot that had been previously divided and previously had a house on it. I'll move into the photo presentation now. So this is the map of the Tampa Heights Historic District. You can see the parcel in question here in green. And then this is the 1920s Sanborn map showing the property as it's, with the house that was on it in the 20s facing Grove Avenue. This is between Amelia Avenue and Francis Avenue. And there's an alley that runs just to the south of the subject site. So this is the aerial view of 2304 North Grove Avenue. You can see the district boundary here in red where the interstate highway is, and see how close it is to that portion of the historic district. Again, Amelia Avenue is to the north and Francis Avenue is to the south. The site is currently vacant and the alley runs just to the south. I believe the alley, while open, is not completely passable there are some trees in it, and, but the area that runs like, from the street and past the subject property is navigable. So this is the subject site. We're looking west at it from Grove Avenue. And then this is the alley that's just to the south. This is a view looking into the site from the alley. So we're sort of looking northwest here. This is the property directly to the north. This house faces Amelia Avenue, and it's on the other portion of the platted lot of the subject property. This is the house that is to the south of the subject property and south of the alley. So you can see that there's another pattern of houses along this particular block that are face the side street. This is the property directly across the street. And this is a view looking north on Central. So the subject site would be to your left. This view is looking south, I'm sorry, not Central, on Grove Avenue. This is looking south on Grove Avenue. This is a view looking west in the alley, and the subject site's to your right. And this view is looking east out of the alley toward Grove Avenue, and the subject site's to your left. At this time, the applicant may come forward and begin his presentation. I would like to note for you this evening that the applicant will present his full request, and then we'll move into the staff reports. And okay, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Good evening. My name's John Cluin, and I'm the authorized agent and the prospective buyer of the lot at 2304 North Grove Ave. I'm a local resident. I've lived in the Tampa area for about 15 years now, and I've been excited to build my own home for quite some time now. And I came across this lot, loved the Tampa Heights area and the connectivity around this lot, so I'm very excited to share with you my proposal for what I intend to do. First, I'd like to start with this boundary survey. And you can see that the lot is very small. It's 42 feet of frontage along Grove. And then along the southern side, there's 57 feet. In total, the lot is only 2,394 square feet. It's about half the size of a conforming parcel in the RM24 zoning. My first step with this lot was to receive, actually I applied for a formal determination letter through the zoning administrator's office to confirm that the lot is in fact buildable. And I did receive a formal determination letter in the affirmative on October 3rd of this past year. And specifically, the letter states that based on the information submitted and reviewed, it was the determination of the zoning administrator that the subject property was a lot of record in 1955 and has remained in single ownership since that date, and therefore it is a non-conforming lot pursuant to section 27-295. The property may be developed consistent with the RM24 development standards except for minimum lot area. On the first page of this report, it does state the setback requirements for the RM24 zoning district. Specifically, the required yards are a front yard of 25 feet, rear yard of 20 feet, and a side yard of 7 feet each. When you look at those setbacks applied to that same boundary survey, you end up with a buildable area of about 336 square feet. So that's really the heart of my variance request, is that there are some severe site constraints and limitations to the buildable area, and in order to construct an adequate house, I would require variances to each of the side setbacks, as well as a variance to the number of parking spaces required, from 2 parking spaces to 1. Specifically, I'm requesting a front yard setback reduction from 25 feet to 6 feet, a rear yard setback reduction from 20 feet to 15 feet, and each a right and a left side yard setback from 7 feet to 5 feet. All of the setbacks would include 2 feet for eaves and gutters. Lastly, I'm also requesting a reduction in the number of required parking spaces from 2 parking spaces to 1 parking space. Finally, I'd like to read the statement of variance hardship for the record. Number 1, the alleged hardships or practical difficulties are unique and singular with respect to the property or with respect to a structure or building thereon, and are not those suffered in common with other properties, structures, or buildings similarly located. My response, yes. The lot has a unique characteristic not shared with other lots, in that it is a non-conforming lot, approximately half the size of other lots fronting Grove Street. This represents unique challenges to build a home without requesting variances to the RM 24 setback distances and parking requirements. Number 2, the hardship or practical difficulty does not result from the actions of the applicant. A self-created hardship or practical difficulty shall not justify a variance. Yes, the lot was legally subdivided prior to 1955, and its non-conforming size is not the result of any actions taken by the owner or the applicant. Number 3, the variance, if granted, will not substantially interfere or injure the health, safety, or welfare of others whose property would be affected by allowance of the variance. Yes, the variance for setback distances and parking spaces will not interfere, affect, or injure the health, safety, or welfare of others or the environment. The proposed home will meet all City of Tampa and Florida building codes. Number 4, the variance is in harmony with and serves the general intent and purpose of this chapter and the adopted Tampa Comprehensive Plan. Yes, the variance is in harmony with and helps achieve the objectives of the Tampa Comprehensive Plan. The variances will allow development that is consistent with the historic character of small homes located in the district. Number 5, allowing the variance will result in substantial justice being done, considering both the public benefits intended to be secured by this chapter and the individual hardships or practical difficulties that will be suffered due to a failure of the board to grant a variance. Yes, the development of the lot is enabled by the granting of the variances and will help improve the block by converting a currently vacant lot into a habitable structure while addressing the unique hardships and challenges of accommodating the build of a single-family home on a non-conforming lot. And finally, number 6, the variance, if granted, will allow development that is consistent with the design standards and compatible with the historic pattern of development within the historic district, historic conservation overlay district, multiple property designation, or the locally designated landmark or landmark site in which the subject property is located. Yes, granting the setback distances and parking space variances allow the construction of the proposed single-family home that will not only maximize the lot space, but that is also compliant with the scale, form, and proportion, as well as the historic character, aesthetics, and heritage of the Tampa Heights neighborhood. The inspiration for the home that I'd like to build was actually taken from an NPR article about historic homes and the impact specifically of Aladdin homes. I identify with their manufacturing ethos, that they were trying to design and construct more efficient homes and pass on those savings to their customers. Specifically, in looking at their catalogs over the years, I really fell in love with this one. It's from the 1917 mail order catalog from Aladdin. It's called the Marsden. And this one really hit home with me, pun intended. Of course, Aladdin is no longer with us as a company, So I have the opportunity to utilize some of their design aesthetics and modernize them. As Ms. Lund showed, this is a photo of the front of the lot from Grove Street. And here is a similarly proportioned home, very similar to the design aesthetic that I'm going for on this lot. Just so you have something in mind as we talk through the site plan. This is the boundary topo and tree survey for the lot. You can see Grove Street here to the right. There is, as Ms. Lund mentioned, a 10-foot plotted alleyway there to the south, which is important. I do intend to utilize, or in order to most efficiently utilize the frontage, I do intend to access the parking space in the rear of the home by utilizing that alleyway. Now this is a bit busy, but you can see the footprint of the actual home as well as the parking space there in the rear. I will have a 6-foot deep porch in the front with some 2 brick steps approaching the porch. The driveway will be along the southern side approaching from the alley. In order to meet code, it's 24 feet to access the parking space, and the parking space 9 feet wide by 18 feet deep. Utilizing the 10 feet of the alley, there's 14 feet of approach on the parcel to access the conforming parking space itself. As you can see, however, there's not sufficient space for a second parking space in the rear, which is why I'm requesting the variance from 2 parking spaces to 1 parking space. The width of the home will be 32 feet, and it will be it'll be 36 feet deep. As I mentioned, there will be a covered porch in the front, 6 feet deep, as well as a covered porch in the back that is 16 feet wide and 6 feet deep as well. The total building coverage is 1,168 square feet. With only about 960 square feet of that under air on the first floor. It will be a 2-story home, and the additional square footage on the second story is about 500 to 600 square feet. To show the elevations, you can see here in the bottom left, this is the front elevation, showing the 4 columns. There'll be brick on the bottom, as well as fiber cement board covering the actual post on the top of those columns. You'll see there are actually double hung windows in the front on each side of a centrally located door. The door will be solid wood with side lights on each side. Upstairs, around the outside, there will be a cedar or a mock cedar shingle siding that actually goes all the way down the side of the second floor, as you see in the side elevations. It'll utilize a 5V crimped metal roof, and it will be hardy board fiber cement siding horizontally laid around the bottom floor. In the back elevation, you can see that covered porch as well. I had proposed a sliding door in the back, but staff actually recommended that I consider a French door. I loved that idea. I do intend to have a French door in the back rather than the sliding glass door. To go into the wall sections, the first floor will be concrete block covered with the hardy board fiber cement siding, the double hung windows. The upstairs will be wood frame covered with the cedar siding or a mock cedar siding, also utilizing a cement fiber board. The front porch will be poured concrete slab, unfinished for now. Intend to paint it. There will be brick facade over the bottom of the columns, fiber cement board on the top of the columns. I do intend to utilize a tongue and groove wood on the ceiling above the porch. One last thing to note is the air conditioner will be located here to the north and will be behind a fence in that setback, 5-foot setback. Lastly, I have some photos of similar design aesthetics that are currently in the Tampa Heights neighborhood, so you get a feel for what I'd like to do. This picture's a little dark, but you can see the cement floor of the porch, the wood door with the side lights there, as well as the tongue and groove, a little hard to see on this photo, but the tongue and groove ceiling over the porch. Also shows the brick bottom of the columns. It's further exemplified here as well, the brick bottom of the columns, the depth of the porch. Here you can also see the fish scale siding on the top, similar to what I have in mind for the second story. This next photo is a great example of a similar roof line in the area. It also utilizes a 5E crimped metal roof. My roof line won't be as dramatic as this one, but the design aesthetic very similar over the dormer as well as over the porch. Again, a great example of the front porch that I'm designing. Here's another photo of the natural wood shingles on the top. Again, this is a fish scale, which I do plan to utilize more of a cedar kind of shake shingle instead of the fish scale. But I do plan to utilize similar lining of the siding, and then of course the white trim boards, very similar to this photo. I have some sample just photos of material palettes. Plan to use the Hardy fiber cement siding as well as that shingle. This is actually what I have in mind for the upstairs exterior. I have not finalized my selection of the exterior lighting. However, I do like kind of this timeless carriage look for the exterior wall sconces. The 5V crimped metal roof. There's a sample of a double hung window, as well as again that brick column with the Hardy board fiber cement over the wood upper part of the column. Also intend to use a fiber board soffit and a Hardy trim board. I haven't finalized the exact door design, but I do like this one and would use it as an example here. Again, you see the skylight or the side lights. It would be a solid wood door. It would also match the back French doors that I do intend to install. And lastly, the entire property would be fenced in with about 6 foot high horizontal wood fence, very similar to the one shown here on the left. To access the driveway, there would be a sliding wood or potentially a wrought iron gate that would slide back to expose the parking space there behind the home. With that, I'd like to conclude my presentation and open it up to questions.
Thank you.
Commissioners, can you hear me? Okay, there we are. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation staff. The applicant has presented both his variance request and his certificate of appropriateness. It's appropriate for this commission to make a motion on the variance request first. Historic Preservation staff provides no staff report on this since it is a finding of fact for the commission. However, we do have a representative from the Development and Growth Management Department this evening who needs to speak to the topic.
John Marsh, Transportation Planning. I'd like to preface that the plan that I reviewed is one iteration before the one you saw today. The applicant I had 4 objections. The applicant has resolved 3 of the objections, and he now does have parking for 1 space, 2 code per, city code. And he was very cooperative in doing the flares and the pushing back. I believe he had a proposed pool, which is now gone because it ate up what little space he had. Transportation does object, though, to the parking waiver from the 2 spaces to 1 space on the premise that it's new construction as a matter of policy. So I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you. All right, at this point, we will open the public hearing to any public comment. Seeing none, the commissioners will now begin asking questions for the variance portion only. Commissioner Clausen, would you like to begin?
Actually, my only question was the parking related, and Zoe answered it. Thank you.
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any questions either.
I have no question.
I have a question for staff regarding the alleyway access. So could you maybe, I guess, the current conditions of the alleyway doesn't look like it would allow for access to the rear of the site?
The driveway the alley does not have to be paved. It does need to be navigable. I made a site visit. It is in light use. There are tire tracks, so it is possible to drive down the alley. One of the reasons we requested him to shove his space up and to have the flares is because it's very tight back there. So he does have the required 24-foot back out, and he can't swing in. He is only one property in. I would probably mow it and maintain it because these things tend not to be very well maintained. There is another property owner that does use it a little further down because I saw evidence of that. So, we used to require, I used to come here and make people pave alleys, but we no longer have that policy, provided it's clear. We looked at this, you may recall, we looked at this parcel before. There is a tree across from the alley and the fence bumps up, but the measurement seemed to work for this.
Okay, thank you.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Is parking available on Grove currently? Like, is street parking available on Grove today?
Yes, it is. I did not observe any no parking signs on that stretch, and I believe there was a few cars that were parked on the street. So it's not a very busy street because it's almost a dead end because the interstate is right over there. So.
However, there's no assignable parking for that particular property or any other property along Grove, so there isn't any way.
You cannot assign parking in the right of way. It's for any member of the public.
I have a question for the agent. Was any designs looked at that would have allowed a second parking spot on the site, and then maybe a 2-story home or something that had a little bit smaller footprint, but then allowed for those 2 spots?
I did consider accessing parking from Grove and having it two parking spaces deep. I found that to be still very site constrained and wouldn't allow me to build the size of home that I would prefer. But I did consider it.
Okay.
In follow-up to that question, please, could you please review again with us your proposed development? You made mention much earlier I am proposing X square feet of development on the site. So much is on the ground floor. Yeah.
So the building footprint would cover 1,168 square feet. That does include the steps to enter the porch in the front, as well as the entire footprint of the building. It does not include the square footage of the apron or the parking pad itself. About 960 square feet are actually under air on the first floor. The second floor would have about 500 to 600 of additional habitable square feet.
Just out of curiosity, do you have floor plans at this point in time?
I have not created floor plans yet.
Okay, just wanted to know because, just as a point of comment, that ground floor is not a whole lot bigger than my first apartment.
Yeah. I've seen apartments bigger than the whole lot.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions for either the agent or staff for the 5 variances?
No.
Okay. The applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
I do not have a rebuttal. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. We'll close this portion of the public hearing. The commissioners can now discuss the variance portion. Commissioner Sutton, would you like to begin?
I will start, please. Thank you very much. Not surprised by my fellow board members. Typically, I'm not a big fan of variances. However, I've got 2 items here with respecting the proposed variances for this site. First of all is the undeniable fact that this is a non-conforming site, either by encumbrance or in this case by an oddball subdivision from quite some time ago. So we have this very, very small site with current zoning regulations basically leaving a postage stamp left behind for development. I think the combination of mistakes that time has brought to us. In that respect, plus a modest proposal for a small dwelling, as is being made tonight, gives us back the use of this site to this neighborhood, as opposed to having it forever orphaned. So in that respect, unlike most of my past, comments on variances, I don't have a problem with this. I think this is an entirely appropriate for the lot size, for its intended use, for the variances being asked for.
There we go. I agree. I think he's done what he can with the non-conforming lot. If there's parking on the street, I'm okay with going down from 2 to 1. If it's just a matter of policy. Yeah, I'm in favor of it.
I agree. My concern with the variance is only sits with the parking spaces from 2 to 1. We're not quite at like a walkable area or to public transport. I think knowing that parking is available on Grove is helpful, but I have no objection to the front, side, or rear setback variances, knowing the size of the lot.
I too agree that the site historically has itself been, there we go. Sorry, the historic conditions that brought the property to the state it is in now. That historically there was a structure there that seemed to, at least by Sanborn, take quite a bit of the property itself and utilize it quite highly. And the fact that it has a neighbor that resides next to it that faces Grove as well that has similar conditions. I think it's harmonious with its context, and we always have to be mindful of that, the scale that it lives in, right? And then understanding components of the larger neighborhood. It's not that far from the community garden. This is not that far from the community multi-use path, which allows both pedestrians and bicycles to come and go from the neighborhood to other spaces within the surrounding neighborhood. So as a matter of the two parking spaces, I'm not a huge fan of making accommodations for a ton of cars when it's quite apparent that there's a movement afoot, and I don't think that, not having any public outcry here tonight indicates that it's not necessarily an issue, for at least for this neighborhood. So are there other ways that he could have diagrammed and organized the primary structure and the parking component? Perhaps, but I think this is great because it gets the parking off the main facade. It allows it to be that condition of public-private space, sort of negotiating that and allowing the car to reside at the rear. So,
No, I would agree. I think obviously the site is very restrictive, and I think your approach to it is a good approach to kind of providing a house on this site that probably wouldn't have one for a while. So I commend you on that. Are there any other additional items that the commissioners would like to discuss? And if not, would a commissioner like to make a motion?
regarding the variance, right?
Yes.
Just variances.
Do we need to specify the square footage request in any of our statements?
I don't see
no.
the particular need for that.
The square footage on our document is incorrect, I believe.
I believe the two, yeah, that's the site.
Of the lot, correct?
Yes.
That's the square footage of the lot,
Right,
correct, Sal?
yes,
It is,
yeah.
but we don't have to
Okay.
mention that, no. So the only thing we would just need to do is to do either a motion for or against the variances with the setbacks, and then the 2 feet for the eaves and gutter, and then the parking.
I guess I ask that because if we approve the variances and the floor plan changes,
That's a different issue.
Yeah, we're not. Right now, we're only looking on the variance, so yes, theoretically, it could, but
We're going on to the certificate of appropriateness next, though, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I move that the variance request for case ARC 21-75 for the property located at 2304 North Grove Avenue be granted as depicted on the site plan presented at the public hearing for, 1, a front setback reduction from 25 feet to 6 feet. 2, a right side setback reduction from 7 feet to 5 feet. 3, a left side setback reduction from 7 feet to 5 feet. 4, a rear setback reduction from 20 feet to 15 feet. And 5, a reduction for the number of parking spaces from 2 to 1. Based upon the petitioner meeting the burden of proof.
could you, you forgot with the encroachment of 2 feet.
With the, with the encroachment of 2 feet for eaves and gutters, based upon the petitioner meeting the burden of proof with regard to the 6 hardship criteria set forth in section 27-114D of the City of Tampa Code and Ordinances for granting variances as stated, and the evidence provided in this public hearing, specifically that the site is acknowledged as being a non-conforming small site, and that the petitioner in his statement of variance has shown clearly, 1, that the alleged hardships or practicalities and practical difficulties are unique and singular with respect to the property. The hardship or practical difficulty does not result from the immediate actions of the applicant, and that the variance, if granted, will allow the development that is consistent and compatible with the historic pattern of development within the historic district.
I second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioners. Elaine Lund, Historic Preservation staff. For the certificate of appropriateness, staff found that this application was consistent with the Tampa Heights design guidelines. There were some conditions noted in the staff report. I believe the applicant has gone through these items in the staff report and addressed them, whether on the drawings or with additional statements and materials presented this evening. There will need to be some future refining of the plans, I believe, to reflect the details that were presented on the final drawings. And with that, I'm available for questions if you have them. Thank you.
Thank you. At this point, we'll open the this portion to the public comment. If anyone would like to speak for or against the certificate of appropriateness. All right, seeing none, the commissioners can now ask questions for the CA portion.
Sir, I do have a question for you. Can you run down for us, please, your intended details of how you are treating your foundation line as your building meets the ground? Are we dealing with an open crawl space, or are we dealing with a block all the way down to the ground? Are we painting something that we're not seeing here? Could you run that down for us, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to do my best. Give me one moment to pull up. So you can see here on this front wall section, print is a bit small, but there'll actually be a stem wall in the front with a poured concrete slab for the first floor all the way towards the back. There will not be a crawl space. It will be a poured concrete slab on a stem wall in the front.
Okay. And what would be that exterior finish? Will that be your clapboard system all the way down to the ground? Or am I looking at some sort of a floor line board and you're gonna paint that portion below that?
Yeah, staff actually commented on that. There will be a board on the bottom that runs the full length before we apply the hardy board siding. So there is. I know we just made this revision. There is a comment right here that addresses this.
Could you read that for us, please? It doesn't come up very well.
Yeah. It says 8-inch cement board, hardy trim, painted with board drip cap.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Any additional questions, Commissioner Sutton?
No, sir, I do not. I yield the floor.
Commissioner, go ahead.
Yeah, no questions here. No, I have nothing.
Sorry, it only does 4. I was like, it's showing green. I'm sorry, could you put your site plan up, please?
Sure.
could you indicate, because these are really small drawings, so it's really hard to tell. I know that you have a fence and then you intend to have a gate. Can you delineate those with just your finger where the fence enclosure is and then where the gate would be?
Of course. So the fence will run along the property line on all four sides. And then the gate, the sliding gate will be right here and will slide to the right to expose the parking space.
Is it your intent to break the 6-foot height at some point and then go to a lower height per the city ordinance?
Excuse me, I may have misspoke. The fence will actually stop right here
Okay,
on each side.
on each side. And then do you intend to have any kind of fencing at the front of the property?
I had not originally intended
Okay.
it, no.
That's fine. So that's all 6 feet and then the gate there. Okay, and then where is it, I don't see it indicated, where do you intend on placing any of your equipment, like AC equipment, water heater, that sort of thing?
On here, the AC unit will be to the north side in the north setback
Okay.
and behind the fence.
Great, okay. In terms of the entry porch, could you put the front elevation up? In the reference material that you had shown the images of like-minded historical precedent, each one seemed to have welcome walls at the porch stairs. Is that an intent, or will you not provide welcome walls?
I think this picture most accurately represents what I have in mind for the front. Are you, when you say a welcome wall, are you referring to a half wall here?
No, they're traditionally what you see at the two sides of the stairs, those low wing walls.
Yes. Okay. I do intend to have those low walls.
Okay.
Yes. A welcome wall.
All right, and then in terms of the porch itself, can we go back to that front elevation? I'm sorry. There is no intent to have a railing of any sort on the porch?
No, I do
And
not.
what's that elevation from the porch to finished grade?
I'm not sure I have that information.
Do you
on
have a
hand.
wall section through the porch?
Yes.
Maybe it's on there.
Oh, this shows it 1 foot and 6 inches. I believe it shows.
No, it's in the earth hatch. So it says 1'6".
Yes, it is quite small.
Looks like it's to the footer.
Actually, 1'4"
Okay.
is what it says. Right.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
I don't have any questions at this time.
If we could look at the rear elevation, specifically where those glass sliders are now. If we do a French door, obviously those French doors are going to be smaller than your sliders. And without knowing what the interior is your intentions to only replace the 3-panel sliders with a single French door unit, or would you do 2 side by side? What are you thinking?
It would look, this is what I have in mind, something very similar to that.
Okay. So it would just be 1 set of doors.
That's correct. Yep. Yep. And I have not designed the floor plan for the interior, but right now my initial thought is that this would be the kitchen area here in the back, and then this would be a dining area, a sit-in dining area, kind of right off the kitchen. So those French doors could open up when it's quite nice outside, and you can enjoy eating and looking at the backyard.
Would you need or have any steps down from that back patio onto the ground? And if so, is that on your site plan or?
It is not on the site plan. I envision that to be at grade, or just slightly above the foundation, maybe being a few inches above grade. I don't anticipate it being a full step down.
So are you thinking that you're going to have then that step down from basically where your French doors is down a foot or more in order to have like that condition that you're kind of describing right now? Because right now it looks like, based off of either the wall sections or the previous section, you're at least 1'4", so 16 to 18 inches at least, kind of from where the grade would be to where your interior floor would be. So if you pull that down, you're talking about as soon as you come out that French door, you're going to be stepping down, a foot and a half.
The way I have it envisioned is that the foundation obviously would be level. It would come down that 1'4" in the front, so there would be the steps up to the front porch. But that back area, I envision I would be driving in, and it would be level, that there wouldn't be a step onto the porch. I understand what you're saying is that there might be a step up into the French doors. It does not reflect that on the site plan, but that is something I certainly should consider more.
Yeah, I think you're just purely based on looking at kind of where your foundation line is all the way around that we just looked at, where for your wall section, where your house. If you were to pull that kind of the grade up to where the interior elevation of your house is, you're starting to come past that line, in which case that gives you some problems. So then the only other question would be to keep that line where it is, but pull your patio or kind of deck down lower, and in which case you'll probably need to have steps somewhere. It's just a question of, do you put that on the outside of your deck so that way it doesn't take up your patio space, or do you put that at your French doors, and in which case that has its own issues. Could we look at the site plan real quick?
Oh, I've got a bigger one if that one's a little too small.
Probably hard to read, or it may not even be on here. Do you happen to know what the distance is between your kind of proposed driveway or parking spot and the actual house?
Yeah.
If you don't.
Yep, I can calculate it right here. It'd be 2 feet.
Okay. So I think one of the things you'll want to just look at is, you're probably going to need to have steps somewhere. It's just a question. So it would be if you want them at those doors, or, depending on how the parking kind of configuration lays out, it might have to go just to the north of the parking spot, but it's something you'll need to look at and how that lays out.
Thank you. I will certainly discuss that with my architect.
And then the only other question that I had is, and I'm not sure if staff can maybe tell me which elevation this is. It said include a 7-inch mullion between the paired windows and the 2-inch window sill. Is that on the rear elevation?
Commissioners, that comment was intended to apply to the all of the paired windows for the wider mullion in between them, and for the sill as well. I'm currently looking at that rear elevation, and that sill should be continuous underneath, I believe, all 4 of those windows on the second floor. Looks like it breaks in between them there.
So, for the agent, do you understand what staff is mentioning?
I do, that it appears that there's a break here in that mullion, or the window seal right there in the mullion between these 2 middle paired windows, and it should continue across the entire bottom of all 4 windows.
Okay, and then it would also apply for the set of windows on the front as well. Just making sure that that also reads that way.
Understood.
Yeah, but think of it as instead of being a 2-window block, a 4-window block.
Got it, all the way across the bottom.
Are there any additional questions or comments for either staff or the applicant?
None, sir.
No.
Okay. At this point, the applicant is allowed 5 minutes for a rebuttal.
I don't have a rebuttal, thank you all very much.
All right. We'll close this portion of the public hearing. Commissioners can now discuss the case if anyone would like to. Commissioner Klausmith, would you like to begin?
I like this project. I like its scale, its attitude. I like the fact that it's embracing street presence. And I find the proportions of the elevations, the way that the windows and the doors speak to one another and the whole facade, relatable and in that it meets a lot of the historic components that we see throughout the district. So I like that it's not trying to be something it shouldn't be.
Yes, I agree. It's not in the slightest bit pushy in any sense. It's really quite respectful to its context and actually to its origins, being the kit houses from a century ago. I think it's done very, very, very well. We've gone through a number of discussions here. There are a few things, though, of a detail item that still need to be coordinated with staff. I have a short laundry list here, so if you don't mind, I'd like to go down what I see as some of the items that need to be coordinated with staff. A lot of this has been presented in one form or another, but it's not entirely resolved. Chief of which, exterior doors, the door hardware, and if need be, flanking lights. We've seen families of products for these, but we've also been told that a final determination as to exact style and exact finish has not been made. Those items should be coordinated with staff. Same thing for fence gates. We've been discussed, we've heard a number of different comments respecting 2 different variations. There could be more variations respecting fence gates. I don't have an objection to where the fencing is going for this, but I think the final determination as to a coordinated gate system, whether it be the long vehicular gate or one of the man gates that you might have more towards the front of the building, will need to be coordinated with staff. I believe that the welcome walls need to be coordinated with respect to their final size, their location, and their finishes. And the rear porch steps need to be coordinated in some fashion or another with respect to the doors, the patios, the driveway. Is there anything else? Did I miss something?
I had the 2-inch sill discussion, we just had about dormers as well.
Yes.
That revised.
I would say overall, I think just there's a couple things, just the drawings need to be updated in general for some of the comments that were made tonight or for staff. So that would, also could be reviewed and verified by staff.
Yes, other than that, I think it's a well put together package. It's just these minor little details that could trip you up, particularly on a very, very, very tight site like this.
Agreed.
I have a minor comment / question for you all. So, I think that the window symmetry has been really well done on the exterior. We often see window sizes changing to accommodate interior conditions like a kitchen at the rear or a bathroom. So I think as the project develops, we might end up seeing conflicts there. I don't know if there's anything that we want to address today. Like, I would hate to see a window be removed because of that, but I could understand, like, I can kind of tell you that that rear window will need to shorten to accommodate the kitchen counter.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
That does come into play, and especially since the floor plans really haven't been worked through yet. We've done it before, where we've said, work with staff. And in some cases, we had a lot less details, and we've asked for it to come back as a continuance. I just don't think that in this particular case, it's.
I don't think that it needs to come back. I just wonder if there's sort of a blurb that we want to include, like the quantity of windows not be reduced, rather the size, or I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you're asking. I just don't know how you could word that and not get into
Yeah, it's kind of hard because
over designing and mandating things.
if you say the quantity, then it's kind of, it'll allow them to put, if they decide to put smaller windows
Put
in,
'em up, yeah.
it picks them up. If they decide to say it needs to stay the same size and it just doesn't work on the interior layouts, then it's kind of, it doesn't work. But I do understand your concern.
On an ordinary scale, if there was a process beyond this point and there were substantial changes being made to the envelope of the building, that would ordinarily end up coming back to us anyway. So could we put that same kind of language here to begin with? I mean, we could recognize that this is a preliminary plan, but if there's a substantial change, it would have to come back before this board.
Well, then are we saying we're giving him preliminary approval?
Well, the other part of this is, without a fleshing out of a basic interior floor plan, the applicant doesn't have an opportunity to finalize to a substantial degree what's happening to the exterior shell of this building. And if we're really that concerned about it, should we be looking at a continuation so that he can make that exercise and make those final determinations?
Kamaria Pettis-Macker from the City Attorney's Office. I just want to remind the commissioners regarding the certificate of appropriateness that the commissioners are, you have the information about the site plan, the elevations, the details in the wall sections, what goes on interior. If you want to condition and again, I'm not trying to encourage a motion either way, but you can set up conditions for a certificate of appropriateness, but you have your parameters already regarding the certificate of appropriateness and what you can take into consideration.
I entirely agree with you, Madam Attorney. What I'm approaching here is if as the applicant continues to formalize his design of his interior, would that or would that not actually affect what is happening on the exterior of the building as we see it tonight?
So
we don't have an answer to that question because that step has not yet been taken.
So I guess my only issue with that would be we don't typically require the interior floor plans to be presented. Now they're helpful because that means it obviously helps dictate what goes on the outside if we want to change a window. I guess my question would be if they, agent had came forward and never had mentioned the interior wasn't laid out, we would have assumed that it was and it would have worked and we would have approved it.
We just typically see the window patterns and sizes change in accordance to the interiors.
No, I agree. I think at this point, though, for my opinion, I would see now the agent has to take the exterior envelope and kind of work from outside in, and he's going to need to design his house to work, and if it doesn't, and if it's gonna drastically change the exterior, I would imagine he's gonna need to come forward again, which might happen, but if the outside works, I mean, the interior could be a million different ways and we have no idea.
Correct.
Mr. Chair, just to reassure you that the staff will work. We routinely deal with minor modifications during the construction document phase, during plan review. If the design begins to stray too far from what the original approval enveloped, then we would require that come back to the commission for review.
Kamaria Pettis, map for the record. Can you put your name on the record since the camera can't see you?
Sure. Dennis Fernandez, Architecture Review and Historic Preservation Manager.
Thank you. Any additional?
I have no further comment.
Comments? Or
Neither
would you
do I.
like to, okay.
I move to grant a certificate of appropriateness for the drawings and documents presented at this public hearing in ARC 21-75 for the property located at 2304 North Grove Avenue with the following conditions: that the door hardware specifications are approved by staff, that the French door at the rear of the house be updated on the drawings, that the final exterior lighting specification is approved by staff, final exterior door specifications are approved by staff, a wood or iron gate specification is approved by staff, that welcome walls are added to the front elevation and details are coordinated with staff, that steps from the rear porch to grade or from the French doors to the rear porch are incorporated and approved by staff, that the sills, 2-inch sill runs continuous under paired windows at front and rear elevations, that the drawings and documents are updated per today's hearing, and coordination of window sizes and patterns per interior layouts are approved by staff. Because based upon the finding of fact, the proposed project is consistent with the Tampa Heights design guidelines for the city of Tampa for the following reasons: that the scale, massing, facade proportions, and roof forms are consistent with the district.
I second the motion.
And then just for the record, could the agent state, come up to the microphone and just say that you understand the conditions?
I understand the conditions.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All in favor? Aye. Against? Motion passes. Thank you. Meeting is adjourned.